everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So yeah, as Patricia kindly introduced us, I'm Anastasia, and this is Ellen, and today we'll be talking about menstrual health and hygiene initiatives in rural Tanzania. Yeah, so just to start off, a quick land acknowledgement. So I'm a settler from Wisapa Ayade, colloquially known as Calgary, which roughly translates to Elbow Town in the Nakota language of the Stoney people. I'm now living in Amiskwasiwaskahigan, or so-called Edmonton, where I'm completing my second year of medical school at the U of A. Amiskwasiwaskahigan translates to Beaver Hills House in Cree and is a place that has been home to Indigenous peoples for millennia. It is a traditional meeting ground of the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, Blackfoot, and Métis peoples. I'm fortunate to have benefited from their traditional land and the immense privileges that come with being a settler on this territory. In talking about our work in global health today, it is important that we recognize how the theft of land, the residential school system, and the ongoing effects of colonialism have negatively impacted the health and well-being of all Indigenous peoples. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional lands of the peoples in Tanganyika, specifically in Morogoro, where our projects are run. Morogoro is located at the base of the Uluguru mountain range, named after the Luguru tribe. The local mountain people of the Waluguru tribe have been living in the mountains for hundreds of years. I recently learned that the land ownership in the Waluguru tribe is passed down the female line, in contrast to other tribes in Tanzania, where patriarchal systems dominate. I will never forget my interactions with local villagers while hiking through the mountains and learning about their unique ways of life 5 kilometers uphill from the nearest shop. After coming back from Tanzania, many people asked me how Africa was, as though it was one country with one history. Obviously, it is a massive, immensely diverse continent with many different tribes, ethnicities, languages, cultural practices, traditions, and unique colonial histories with complex borders and relations. In acknowledging this diversity, I will leave you all with a link to one of my favorite TED Talks from novelist Chimamanda Adichie called The Danger of a Single Story. So I'll just post that in the chat real quick.
I just wanted to start off a little bit today by introducing ourselves as an organization and speak a little bit about CIHA's mission and how our structure is set up to achieve these goals that we've set. So CIHA's vision, so CIHA is the Students Invested in Health Association, is to empower communities addressing barriers to health. And this is based initially on the Health for All slogan that was promoted by the 1978 International Conference on Primary Healthcare. And our mission is to develop the capacity of both CIHA members and the communities we work with to address health barriers by engaging with key local and international stakeholders in the development and implementation of sustainable and community-driven health initiatives. Through developing relationships with individuals and organizations that are also committed to social change and engaging in co-learning with health education and promoting local capacity. CIHA works to support grassroots change and the sustainable reduction of the social and economic hardships that are presented by major health threats in these low resource settings. And so this is a little bit about our structure. So CIHA is a student group run through the University of Alberta. It's composed primarily of undergraduate students, but we do have graduate students as well. Anastasia is in medical school herself, and we have a couple interns who were in their master's programs. And we are composed of 2 branches. So we have our local branch and our international branch. It is important to recognize that we are working abroad, but we do have local challenges here within Alberta and within Edmonton as well. And we do need to work to tackle the issues we have locally before stepping out abroad. So our local branch is composed of 4 sub-branches, and this involves peer health education. We also have a newer branch, which is Indigenous Relations and Projects. And then we have our outreach and rural branches. And then our international branch, as we've mentioned, works primarily in Tanzania.
Okay, now just going over a brief history of CIHA. So it was founded in 1989 by a medical student founded under the slogan Health for All. And the first international project was started in Guyana. In 1994, we then moved to Tanzania, and in 2002, focused exclusively on Tanzania. And we had projects related to sexual health, sanitation, infant and maternal health, diabetes, malaria, HIV, AIDS, safe drinking water, tuberculosis, and maternal health. In 2010, we moved to Mwandizi, which is a rural area of Tanzania. And then in 2018, we shifted to exclusively Morogoro. And being a more centralized location in Tanzania, it provides access to many urban communities as well as the large surrounding rural area where we have run some of our projects recently.
And so we just wanted to introduce SIHA's 5 guiding principles that we operate under, and this is so that we strive to abide by within these principles with both our work here in Edmonton and while we're abroad in Tanzania. So SIHA operates under 5 main guiding principles, the first one being multifaceted action, the second one, anti-oppressive processes, third, reciprocal knowledge translation, and then community-driven initiatives and sustainable solutions. And just to give a little bit of context with these initiatives, so our first subject of multifaceted action, this encompasses 2 approaches we use to tackle root causes of complex and interconnected health issues. So this works as a multi-sectoral approach. This is considered more horizontal. So in this way, we connect different sectors such as education, healthcare, policy and government, and private corporations. And then we also work on a multilateral scale where we work to connect different levels of governance within these sectors individually. So this includes administration, policy again, but also frontline workers. And our anti-oppression work seeks to recognize the oppression that exists in our society and attempt to mitigate its effects so that we can eventually equalize the power imbalance within our communities. And it's important to recognize that oppression operates at different levels. This includes individual to institutional to cultural. And so it's important to recognize that within these anti-oppression processes, we must as well. We want to equalize power imbalances at all levels. And so an example of how we do this within our organization and with our projects is to integrate intersectionality into collaborative approaches, facilitating a calling in versus a calling out culture, and actively challenging your own biases and assumptions. Reciprocal knowledge translation is a really core element of SIHA just because of the nature of our work working within local communities that we aren't actively involved in. And so this involves reciprocal sharing of what you know with others in a way that is accessible, relevant, and useful for our parties. So this is a really good 2-way flow of knowledge where we learn from the community that we're working in, as much as they learn from us. So some examples within our work is our Tanzanian team. This is ERDI, which we'll introduce a little bit more about later. They take initiative in consultation with community members. We also have a lot of sharing, discussion, ideas about projects where everybody is included in the conversation and everybody has a voice, in addition to ensuring that respect is present in all forms of communication.
Okay, and now for community-based initiatives. So basically this entails that all of our projects, the idea originally stems from the community, and it's recognizing that the community members are the experts in their own issues. So we do this by running community needs assessments. So ERDI helps facilitate that, where they go into the community, they interview the community members, teachers, kids, health professionals, and try and gather as much information as possible from the community to assess what they need and how we can best work on solutions together with them. And additionally, this involves community agency. So this involves empowering the community to solve their own health issues and connect them with the necessary resources, contacts, and other information to strengthen their own initiatives. And yeah, lastly, we have sustainable solutions. So this just ensures that the longevity of our process and of our projects, and also working with the community instead of for the community. So this involves long-term thinking and planning, making sure we use local resources and build community capacity, and not necessarily just giving the community resources and then abandoning them and not following up with the project. The ultimate goal of all of our projects and initiatives is that eventually the community takes full ownership of the project, so then it is sustainable while we are out of country. Then in terms of how projects are decided, there is a long process that goes into deciding what is inside versus outside of CIHA's scope. So some examples of things that are inside our scope is collecting and synthesizing research, networking with local NGOs and other individuals in country, acting as liaisons between NGOs and the local community members, generating new ideas, collaborating with local community, building relationships and community trust, and providing resources with regard to our principles. However, outside of our scope is things like CIHA providing monetary funds to build physical infrastructure, providing expertise, because at the end of the day, we all mostly are undergraduate students. We are not professionals going into country there to provide expertise. We're just there to work with community to the best of our capacity and provide resources without regard to our principles. So this kind of entails going above our actual expertise level and kind of imposing our Western values.
So I mentioned a little bit before about our local partnership with URDI. This is our Tanzanian team in country, and they're pivotal to running our projects in country and keeping things going while our intern team is back in Canada throughout the academic year. And they are also key in helping us abide by our 5 guiding principles. So URDI stands for the Uluguru Repository for Development Investment, and they are a Tanzanian sister organization in which we work alongside. Their mission is similar to CIHA's, in which they are working to improve people's livelihoods and quality of life through empowering communities to address barriers in health, agriculture, education, and environment. We work with them throughout the summer and throughout the year as well, as they are essential to keeping things running while we're out of the country. It was founded in 2018 and is comprised of local members who I will introduce in the next slides, which are a mix of both paid staff and volunteers as well. URDI helps us create and maintain partnerships with other local NGOs in Tanzania, along with facilitating reciprocal knowledge exchange, cultural and language exchange as well. They are a registered Tanzanian NGO, and they are essential in providing us crucial insight into local values and needs, and they are vital to the functioning of CIHA International. So we really wouldn't be anywhere without URDI, and we really strive to make sure that that's very well aware. And the roles and responsibilities of URDIs, as I mentioned, it includes providing crucial insight on local and cultural practices and values as well. They serve as liaisons between CIHA and the community. They help foster the connection between CIHA members and the community, which includes language translation, and along with setting up meetings and community needs assessments as well. And we strive to maintain a balance of the CIHA team working alongside the community without imposing ourselves. And in this sense, URDI helps to both implement, plan, and evaluate CIHA projects, and they're pivotal to maintaining ongoing projects while the CIHA International team is in Canada. And so this is our URDI team here. This is Charles and MK. They are in-country representatives, and they've been with CIHA for over 10 years now, so well longer than many CIHA members currently running. And they've done a great job. They've dedicated so much of their time to URDI and to CIHA and the programs that we institute. And we also have 2 volunteers. Pastone has been with CIHA for a good couple of years now, and he primarily works to train the interns in Swahili. He gives us Swahili lessons while we're in country and out of country. And then Pili recently joined the URDI team. She's an in-country volunteer as well. She joined last year, and she's been a great tool and individual in helping us both transition the interns into living in country throughout the internship. And furthermore as well, with our menstrual hygiene project, she's been a great resource when it comes to cultural practices and awareness on that subject. And we'll go a little bit into that later.
Okay, so to touch on our first project, it's water hygiene and sanitation project. And this is kind of just essential to introduce to preface the menstrual hygiene project. So the initial problem that was identified by the community is that there was unsafe and unreliable water supply that existed in Morogoro, and specifically in the Tungi region, which is a surrounding rural area around Morogoro. It's a very dry, dusty climate, and water supply is extremely unreliable. So the solution that was identified by the ERDI team and SIHA collaborating was a WASH curriculum, which is an education-based project that aims to improve widespread knowledge and practices about hand washing techniques. So then going into our process, so this was a community-driven initiative. It was the community members and the teachers themselves that came to ERDI with concerns about water safety and not enough teachings in school. So they brought this issue to ERDI. And then in collaboration with ERDI, SIHA worked on developing a WASH curriculum that was culturally relevant by adapting from a standardized curriculum from Sun International. And this just ensured that we are using the proper resources and making sure it's adapted to the community-specific needs. And then this project was first implemented in 2019 at the Tungi Primary School and has been successfully run ever since. Even through COVID, when we weren't able to go back to Tanzania, our ERDI team has been teaching this curriculum every single year. And we've been able to establish a safe water supply. So it's been successful since.
So just a little bit about the current state of affairs of the WASH program in country. As Anastasia mentioned, WASH has been running in Tungi Primary School since 2019. And with COVID, we did have a pause in the intern team traveling to Morogoro. So 2020, obviously there was no travel at all, and things kind of came to a halt pretty quickly. In 2021, we did run a virtual internship, and this is when Anastasia and I joined the organization. In this time, we operated fully still in Canada, and ERDI helped facilitate the entire process throughout the internship. In 2021, we reviewed the first year of the WASH program running, and this included some quantitative student assessments in addition to qualitative reviews from student teachers and community stakeholders as well. So this past year, 2022, travel did resume, and we extensively met with Tungi Primary School to get a greater perspective of both the water accessibility through the water tank, which is shown in this slide here that SIHA previously aided in providing, and then along with the running of the WASH program itself, since it had been a few years since we had been in country. And in this time, both the educational staff at the school and the community stakeholders brought up the need for programs concerning menstrual health and hygiene. So following this, we moved towards discussions of developing and implementing a menstrual hygiene curriculum, what lessons might look like, and what the feasibility of this was at all. And the module topics of the WASH program itself is pretty broad. We do have to take into account that this is a primary school, so elementary aged children being taught this curriculum. But some of the main topics include water cycling, water treatment, mechanisms of pathogen spread, and important sanitation practices. In this time, we want to emphasize that SIHA does not go into these schools to provide this education. This is what ERDI provides. We are not teaching the curriculum, the Tanzanian team is. However, we did help implement and adapt the curriculum from previous WASH programs, and this includes information like from the WHO and from Sun International.
Yeah, so just going into the menstrual health and hygiene management then, the reason we prefaced with WASH is because these programs can't really run without a safe water supply or without safe WASH practices. So the idea of the additional menstrual health module originally stemmed from the WASH program. So ERDI had initially met with a local NGO called Her Initiative, who identified to them that menstrual hygiene management education has been a pressing issue in Tanzania and is definitely something that the community currently needs. They identified that girls can miss up to 5 days of school per month due to their periods. So this is a significant portion of time, almost a quarter of their education is being missed out on because they have to stay home to manage their periods. And some barriers that were identified by the community members, by parents and teachers, is that there's minimal knowledge about menstrual processes. This is in part due to the stigma that is associated with menstruating. Specifically, a lot of boys aren't taught about menstruation, and because of that, they tease their peers often. And girls will often not know about menstruation until it happens to themselves. It's just not a topic that's discussed in the home, and it's kind of discussed in schools at quite a later time. There's also a lack of access to running water and hygienic menstrual products. From some of the interviews that we ran last summer, some individuals described that they get running water once a week and store it, or they have to walk significant distances to access clean water supply. And there's also a lack of a private space to change menstrual products at school. So you can imagine, since there's already a stigma associated with menstruating, it's a taboo topic that can't even be discussed within the home. Menstruating at school can be extremely embarrassing for these kids. So if there isn't a private space for them to be able to manage their periods, they stay home from school. So there was also a need identified for a menstrual chamber. So Tangi identified that there are no private facilities for girls to change and wash their pads, and this is kind of what facilitates that decision to stay home while menstruating. And then there's also a lack of adequate washrooms for people to have time to change their pads between classes. So a standard recommended ratio of toilets should be 1 toilet to 20 students, but at Tangi, there are only 4 toilets present for about 500 female students. So the teachers kind of identified this as an issue of timing between classes, in addition to the lack of privacy. So taking all of this information together, we identified 2 main project goals. The first being implementing a menstrual hygiene curriculum. So this would aim to empower the grade 5 and 6 students in the rural regions of Tanzania with the knowledge and skills to implement healthy menstrual hygiene practices into their daily lives. And a menstrual hygiene chamber. So this is a private facility for girls to be able to safely change their pads at school and practice hygienic practices in between classes. So this would ideally reduce the number of school days missed by young girls.
And here we have just an example lesson plan pulled from our syllabus. So lessons include both information about the subject at hand, discussion questions, and activities as well. We do have an anonymous question box that runs throughout the entire curriculum for students who may not be comfortable asking certain questions in front of their peers. The aim is to both inform, prepare, and reduce stigma about menstrual health and hygiene in a culturally and age-appropriate manner. So we have a couple session topics just on the side of the screen here. It includes an introduction to puberty and menstruation. We have the physical and emotional aspects. Then we go into the menstrual cycle itself, including pregnancy and consent. And then we have period management and respect. Session 5 and 6 are practical sessions. So these include activities such as the mapping of the timeline of menstruation and how to make your own reusable pad as well. These sessions are for females only. This was an ask of the community that we did draw from our community needs assessment. And in order for ERDI to be equipped to teach this subject in schools, it was imperative that they also receive the appropriate training to do so. So one of our goals for our internship last summer was to find an appropriate training module that was specific to the needs of this project and the curriculum that had been developed between us and ERDI and the community. So we also had to face a barrier of needing to source funding for this training, sorry. So this was a part of our partnership with the Rotary Club, and we were able to fund ERDI's training in menstrual hygiene education. This was done through a Tanzanian government organization that ERDI had actually brought to us, and they underwent a week's worth of training in both education and practical instruction regarding menstrual hygiene. So this is just a couple of the photos from this session here. And part of this training included teaching them how to make reusable pads. So this is part of our efforts to source a more sustainable resource for girls to manage their periods. Using cloth is quite culturally common. So this was a big part of this training. And on the right here, we have a photo of Charles and MK, and then also Madam Jane, one of the Tungi primary school head teachers, learning how to make the pads so that they could pass this information along to the students. And this is a little bit about what Anastasia mentioned. So we did end up renovating a menstrual hygiene chamber to provide a safe space for girls to change their periods, change their period pads, and practice menstrual hygiene. So Tungi brought the idea of the chamber up to us as there is no safe space for girls to manage their periods. We renovated a storage closet at Tungi that hadn't been used for quite some time. And this idea was brought up to us by Madam Jane. And this was done through in partnership with the Rotary, both in Mayfield and in Dar es Salaam locally. So we just have some before photos there. And then these are the after photos. So this happened within a couple months. There is another room kind of in, you can see through that door there, that just has the toilet. And the aim is to also be able to stock this room with a sustainable source of period supplies.
And if I could just quickly add on to the one piece about the education. So our curriculum, it was developed based on local resources. So there are local resources that have teachings about puberty and menstruation, but the teachers identified that this wasn't enough of a teaching about menstruation. So we worked with the local resources, with the local teachers, and as well Pili, to make sure that all of these teachings are culturally sensitive and culturally competent, because the way that we teach puberty in Canada may not be accepted in Tanzania. So we were working with the community the whole way, and even the translation into Kiswahili. One of the interns on our team last year was fluent in Swahili, so he was able to make sure that everything was getting translated, and the context was getting translated as well, not just Google Translate words. And then in addition, just about the menstrual hygiene chamber construction and the water tank, while construction and infrastructure is outside of SIHA's scope, this is an ethical dilemma that we face often in global health, because education only goes so far, right? Like with water, safe access to water supply, yes, we can teach students how to wash their hands and what safe water and hygiene practices are, but this won't go anywhere without a safe access to water. And we ran into the same dilemma with the menstrual hygiene chamber construction, where initially we determined that this is outside of SIHA's scope, that this is an infrastructural investment that we can't ethically contribute to because it may be unsustainable in the future. However, the community identified that without this chamber, education won't go anywhere and it won't provide changes. And our end goal is to make sure that girls aren't feeling the need to stay home from school. And we wouldn't have been able to achieve that goal without this chamber, as the community identified. So that's kind of what justified the construction for us. And then, yeah, moving on to what the future holds. So I think our biggest current step is project expansion. So we've been at Tungi Primary School for 4 years now and have successfully ran the WASH program as well as evaluated it 2 years ago. So we have made additions to the curriculum, made sure that the community is happy with where the project is going. And now we are in discussion with Nane Nane School and Tubuyu Primary School. And they are also highly interested in implementing the WASH program. So in terms of the menstrual hygiene future timeline, in 2022, so last summer, we have been able to complete the menstrual hygiene chamber renovation, as well as partnering with a local NGO to get access to well construction for the Tungi Primary School. So we connected them with a different NGO that has the capacity to do that sort of construction and ensure its maintenance. And then in 2023, we are hoping to expand the WASH and menstrual hygiene programs to Tubuyu Primary and Nane Nane Primary. And then our 5-year plan is to establish a reliable supply of menstrual products. And in connecting with the Rotary Club, they've given us many good ideas, many good connections. We're in talks of partnering with local NGO Days for Girls about a reliable supply of these products, as well as that menstrual hygiene training that Ellen discussed. We have trained our local ERDI members and have talked about training the teachers how to create reusable pads, as well as the expansion of the menstrual hygiene chamber spaces to additional schools. So this is an idea that came from the Rotary, and they are looking at funding these chamber spaces at additional schools if this pilot project goes well.
Yeah, and once again, we do want to emphasize that we are also learning from this project as students as much as we hope to bring to the communities we are working with. And so this whole experience as a whole is incredibly well-rounded in the things we gain. It's immeasurable how great of an experience this has been. We had a couple little photos here of just our experience in general last summer. We partook in a cultural exchange, so we kind of reached out to a local university, and we had weekly meetings with some university students, so very like-minded, similar in age, where we kind of shared all sorts of information, just like daily life, what school is like, future goals. We also were able to partake in community engagement, knowledge translation, and just explore the beautiful country of Tanzania. And I think we just have a couple pictures of our trip here. So this is Morogoro. Again, this is an absolutely beautiful region. Based in the Uluguru Mountains. It is an expansive geographic region of just everything you could really want to explore. So we really were fulfilled by this experience. And I think that brings us to the end. Yeah, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time. And if there's any questions at all, like, you can feel free to reach out to either myself or Anastasia. Our email is listed, and we have a couple social media pages as well. Yeah, we'd love to learn from everybody else. And yeah, thanks for your time.